So here I am sitting in my Maserati once again. I actually had some really cold weather, and when it's really cold, I don't even want to start it. But I didn't have a trickle charger on my battery, so naturally my battery went dead again because we had this terrible cold snap here in northern Alberta. And so I got the battery charged up again, and the weather's been kind of mild, but even when it's mild, car like this will use up a fair bit of power just for its alarm system and whatever else is always running in these cars. The battery will actually drain pretty quickly if you aren't driving it. And of course, I'm not going to drive it because it's got 22-inch rims on it, and tires that are only good in the summertime, not on ice. So it's just sitting here looking not even pretty because it's got a cover over it the whole time, but it's just sitting in the driveway. But I wanted to tell you another story about the SSP, and this time I'm going to tell you a story about a time travel event that occurred. And the reason I'm kind of jumping ahead, this actually happened so 12 and 7, 19 years into my 25 years of service in the SSP. And so, I had been, on my Earth life, I'd been dreaming about everything I was doing in space, and, still kind of confused, but at this point, I still didn't know what was going on. I was just having dreams that occurred in my real life that came true, and some of them were pretty bizarre, and I didn't think they could possibly come true, but they all came true exactly as I dreamt them. And I was like, man, this is weird. But then I had all these other dreams that seemed just as real, and so I was wondering, when is this gonna happen? How is this gonna happen? What are these dreams? Why do I keep having these dreams? Because the dreams had a definite starting date, and they had a definite finishing date. So there was a start and a finish to all these dreams. At the time, I didn't know it, right? Because I'm still having these dreams 19 years in. They wouldn't stop for another 6 years after that is when they finally stopped. And I was still probably a year or two from actually getting a clue as to what I was dreaming about and what I was experiencing, or this other me in space was experiencing. But in 2012, I started having these dreams, and they were dreams where I was living in 1955. And I lived in a house. I had this beautiful blonde wife, which doesn't make sense because I'm not really into blondes, but I had this beautiful blonde wife in this dream. And I had a job in that time. She had a job in that time. We were just, for all practical purposes, a perfectly normal couple in 1955. So here I am in 2012. I fall asleep at night and I dream about a life in 1955, right? And then the strange thing is, let's turn this fan down a bit, is in 1955, I would fall asleep. And when I fell asleep in 1955, I would wake up in 1893. And there was this beautiful girl there named Catherine. I'll tell you about the first experience with her, but we ended up being an item, I was her future boy lover, and she was my Victorian goddess, right? And so, I mean, these dreams were pretty interesting, but the one I want to talk to you about is the time. So we had like a mission we were working on. We had something that we needed to do, and part of that mission involved getting to know the different people, the inventors and entrepreneurs. We were looking for someone specific who was going to do something amazing for the future. But we didn't know who that person was even going to be at that time. So, I mean, now if we look back at history, we know exactly who it was. But back then, we didn't know who it was. So, I guess it kind of implies that it hadn't actually happened yet. Although it may have happened in my time, but for some reason, I don't think we knew who it was going to be, which was kind of bizarre. It almost makes me think that I actually at some point existed in a different timeline, but the point is like I don't remember that timeline, although I do have a memory of a type of device that no one else remembers, but that's another story. So anyways, we decided that we would go to the Chicago World Fair. And at the Chicago World Fair, there would be inventors, there would be entrepreneurs, there would be all sorts of interesting people that we could meet and talk to. These would be the contacts that we would use to complete the mission that we were working on. And so Catherine was the what I call the Victorian goddess. She was a very, very wealthy young widow. Her father had passed away and her husband had passed away. They were both very wealthy businessmen and left her with a huge fortune and businesses and properties. And she lived in a fancy manor house somewhere in New York State, because I really don't know the exact location. So we traveled to Chicago. Well, I guess I should. So whenever I appeared in the past, I always arrive completely naked. So she kept a closet of clothes there for me, and she provided the money, the transportation, everything. So I had arrived in sometime in the it would have been 1893 for this particular one. And we traveled to Chicago, where we rented a fancy hotel suite downtown, and we rode the train. So there was a raised electric train, kind of like a subway car, but it was up in the air like a light rail transit that ran from downtown Chicago to the Chicago World Fair. So we went to the Chicago World Fair. And I remember in the dream, we had decided that the first day at the fair, we were just going to have fun, that this was going to be for us because we were basically a couple. And, I was her man and she was my girl. And we were just going to have some fun the first day. And then, the rest of the week we would worry about meeting the different people and making the contacts that we would need for our mission that we were working on. So something interesting happened that day, and back in 2012 when I had the dream, I was on an exercise in Wainwright, and when I had these dreams, I'd get up in the morning and I'd tell the guys in the tent that we were staying in. There was 12 of us in this big tent, and I would tell them about the dream, and one of the guys said, "Man, like those dreams are amazing, like you should write a book." So I actually tried to write a book, and I wrote about 3 paragraphs of these dreams, and then it just didn't feel right to me. Like I was like, this is not the right story. Like where I'm going with this doesn't seem right. So I stopped, but I left them there, and they're still there right now. Um, it's on Fiction Press. So I thought, okay, so um, so now, many years later, um, I was sitting there. It was actually on the 11th of January. I had a bunch of time off over the holidays, and I was sitting there and I was thinking about this dream, and I said, well, if this dream is real, there must be some sort of evidence, right? There must be something. And I kind of suspected it was real, but I wasn't 100% sure. Like, you always wonder, like, what's the proof? So as I'm lying there in bed thinking about it, right? Um, I I just had these words pop into my head. Check the 100th anniversary special edition, and I was like, what the heck? And I got up from my bed and I went to the computer and I put the name of the company in with 100th anniversary special edition. And sure enough, right, there was a special edition tin with an image that was like right out of my dream, like right there in front of me. And for me, that was enough proof to say, okay, you know what? I'm starting to tell this story. I'm going to write it. I'm going to make songs about it, right? And so I started doing that. And it's been fun. It's been a couple months now, and I actually have enough for an entire album. But I decided I'm going to release this one song, and I'm going to make not a very expensive music video about it, just like a slideshow with some AI slides of different, based on my dreams and my description of it. This is what AI produced for the pictures, but they're pretty close to what I saw. So I'm pretty happy with the pictures. Very happy with the song that I made. Again, I used AI to make the song, but it's my story. I wrote the song. I just used AI to produce the music because I don't have those skills, and I wanted to create a song because sometimes you can convey the emotion of the experience through the song a lot better than just telling a story. Although I plan to tell the stories and I plan to finish a book about it. But everything clicked in that moment. Like, everything made sense. I realized I have to accept what is in my head because for me, this was proof. Now, for most people, maybe it wouldn't be proof, but it was enough proof, and it came with so much emotion and feeling that I couldn't really deny it. So what it was the story. So we were at the Chicago World Fair, and we're getting ready to go for a ride on the Ferris wheel. And Catherine said to me, hey, why don't we get some snacks to eat, while we're waiting in line for the Ferris wheel, because there's quite a long lineup for it. And I looked around and we saw this stand, and it said, F something. Can't remember his name. I know it starts with an R. And brother, caramelized popcorn. And I went up to talk to them, and I said, like, how come, one of you has your name on the sign, but the other's just the and brother? And so the younger brother spoke up and he goes, yeah, my name is Louis, and I'm the one that figured out how to make the caramel not sticky. And they explained to me that this was something that they had learned from the natives of America, that they had used maple syrup, and they had popcorn, and they would make these balls with corn and maple syrup, and this was one of their winter staples as a way of preserving food for the winter time, and that's where the idea came from. And so I thought, oh, that's really interesting, and I bought a bag for Catherine, and I bought a bag for myself. And so I was still talking with Louis and his older brother, who went by the name Fritz. And I was like, I reached in and I grabbed some of the caramelized popcorn, and I noticed, like, the smell was like really, really familiar, right? And I was like, wow, And then I put it in my mouth and I took a bite of it, and I just accidentally exclaimed, "That's Cracker Jack." And the two brothers, their eyes kind of lit up. They looked at each other, and then Fritz looked at me and he said, "Why, so it is." And he nodded his head. And that's how their caramelized popcorn came to be known as the Cracker Jack. And it's sort of a funny thing, because later on, as I was recalling my experiences traveling in space and that, they actually pulled me into the office to to kind of get me in trouble for like actually doing that, for actually naming this product. But then they started laughing and giggling. It turned out it was just like a big joke they were playing on me. So that's what my song is about. My song is about traveling back in time, going to the fair with Catherine, and accidentally naming the caramelized popcorn by the name that we all know it as the Cracker Jack. It also talks about how I felt when I realized, when I saw that tin with that image of my dream on it. And I show the tin in the video, and it was a really emotionally significant moment for me, in which I realized that there's something more to these dreams that I had been having for 25 years, right? They've long since stopped now. This is after the 25 years. Like I said, there was an end to it. But I realized that all these dreams and these half-formed memories in my head that I can sometimes recall, if I get along the right train of thought, I can recall the whole story now. Like, I have to accept these as being a part of me. These are real. I wouldn't be surprised if more proofs materialized. I'd love to see the drawings from some of the stuff that I help people develop, and just if it'd be so cool if I sign my signature in a way that only I would know, other people wouldn't know on a document, right? And or if there's some clues I left myself, like, I don't know if I'll ever find those or if anyone will find those, but the tin was like a dead giveaway for me. Like, it didn't appear anywhere else in any of their history except on their 100th anniversary special edition. That's the only time that image from my dream appeared. And I, after I got up from that dream, I checked, right? The company doesn't even know who named a Cracker Jack. They think it was a passing salesman who just exclaimed, "That's a Cracker Jack." And they were like, "Isn't that cool? That's how we got the name for our company." And the thing is like, it wasn't a passing salesman, although I may have looked like a salesman because I was wearing a suit. I was always dressed very nicely, thanks to Catherine. And of course, we had to be presentable because we were talking to business people and trying to get them to develop a technology that we needed for the future. So yeah, so that's what the song's about. It's like, hey, it wasn't a salesman. It was me, a time traveler. Have a nice day. Hope you enjoyed the story, and if you fell asleep in the middle of it, well, you can listen to it again. Yeah, that's it. Sweet dreams.